What's up YouTube? Ben here with another video for Fluent in Finance, a channel devoted to helping you take control of your personal finances by earning more, spending less, and investing the difference. Because once your finances are in order, you can then begin to engineer the kind of lifestyle that you've always dreamed about. But before we do that, if you find this video useful, then chances are other people will too. So do me a huge favor, hit the like button down below, leave a comment. It helps the YouTube algorithm so that more people will be able to find useful content like this and be able to take control of their finances too. And if you're serious about finance, be sure to subscribe as there's new videos every week. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the 4% rule and how it applies to retirement. Now, traditionally, people would save their entire lives and slowly build up a retirement nest egg. Then once they hit the classical retirement age of about 65, they would quit their job and officially retire. Yay! And then they would go and pay a visit to their financial advisor and ask them how much money they could withdraw from their nest egg every year without ever running out of money. And that's where the problem came in, because these financial advisors, they didn't really know. You see, nobody had ever done a comprehensive study on retirement withdrawal rates. And so these answers from these so-called advisors would vary greatly depending on who you asked. Thankfully, in 1994, a finance guru from MIT by the name of William Bengen conducted a massive analysis on the maximum safe withdrawal rates. This study was then followed up 4 years later by a team of experts from Trinity University, who reached the exact same conclusion. Now, the goal in this experiment was to maximize your withdrawal rates without ever running out of money any earlier than 30 years. This is important because people tend to retire in their 60s, which means if your money lasts for an additional 30 years, that should, theoretically, easily take them out past their expected lifespan. And the conclusion of the study was this: under no historical models, dating all the way back to the 1920s, would a withdrawal rate of 4%, adjusted for inflation, deplete an investment account in fewer than 30 years, assuming a 50-50 split between stocks and bonds. Now, when the economy is doing great, it's easy to never run out of money. Therefore, this study focused extensively on the times when the economy was doing poorly, such as the Great Depression beginning in 1929, where over a 4-year span, the stock market experienced a whopping 90% loss from its record highs. Even during the most volatile of periods, a proper allocation of 50-50 between stocks and bonds would last a minimum of 30 years. So essentially, the 4% rule, which is sometimes referred to as the 25x rule, states that you should be able to safely withdraw from your retirement account 4%, adjusted for inflation, of your initial balance without fear of ever running out of money too quickly. So if you're 65 years old and have saved your entire life and have $1 million saved in an investment account, you should be able to safely withdraw about 40,000 inflation-adjusted dollars each year. As you can see, this 40,000 multiplied by 25 takes us back to our original $1 million, which is why it's sometimes referred to as the 25x rule. This is part of the equation and is useful for those of us in the FIRE community, which is an acronym for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Instead of retiring at a specific age with a predefined nest egg, in the FIRE community, we're typically more concerned with how soon can we retire, assuming we need a set amount of income each year. So if I wanted to retire today with an annual income of $50,000, I would need to multiply that by 25, which means I would need about $1.25 million in order to retire today. If up until this point, if I had only saved $1 million in the bank, then I would need to keep saving for a few more years before I could officially retire on the amount of annual income that I desired. Now you might be wondering, how can you consistently withdraw money and never run out? Well, the answer is that the stock market historically returns an average return on investment of about 10% each year. Now this return comes in various forms. It comes from both increased stock price as well as dividend payouts. And while the current bond rate is rather low, the average historical 10-year Treasury note returns an average of about 4.5%. So assuming a 50-50 split between stocks and bonds, we're averaging about a 7.25% annual gain, and we're only withdrawing about 4%. And assuming that inflation is at 2% each year, which is the target rate of inflation as dictated by the Federal Reserve, then we're left with a 1.25% spread, where we're actually gaining money each year, even after making our withdrawals. So let's consider this scenario. Let's assume someone has saved $1 million and will then withdraw 4% each year, or $40,000. Now, usually you would space that withdrawal out periodically throughout the year, but to keep math simple, we'll assume that you immediately withdraw all of that money at the start of the year. So initially, your balance will drop down to $960,000. And then, assuming an average year in both the stock and bond markets, you will experience a 7.25% annual return, which will cause this number to go back up to $1,029,600 by the end of the year. Now, the next year, we're going to start all over again and withdraw our $40,000, this time adjusted for inflation, which, if we assume inflation is at 2%, turns out to be $40,800. Now our balance goes down to $988,800, but due to that historical average gain, turns into $1,060,000 and some change by the end of the year. As you can see, during an average year, that amount that your investment gains is larger than the amount that you withdraw, causing your total nest egg to actually increase in value over time. Now, I can already hear yourself thinking, wait, if my nest egg is going up, shouldn't I be able to withdraw more money and still have it last forever? Well, the answer is no. You see, while the historical rate of return is relatively strong, the reality is that the stock market experiences massive shifts from year to year. Sometimes it makes massive gains, and sometimes, unfortunately, it experiences significant losses. This is important, in fact, because losses actually hurt more than gains help. Warren Buffett, who is possibly the most influential investor of our time, is famously quoted as having two rules when it comes to investing. Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Now, it's true that if the stock market experiences a downturn and you leave your money in and you don't sell anything, then eventually the market will recover and everything will be fine again. The problem is that during retirement, we are consistently withdrawing money such that when the stock market goes down, the money that is withdrawn never has a chance to return to its previous value. So let's look at another example where the stock market crashes shortly after our retirement and loses half of its value. In this scenario, our $1 million nest egg is reduced by $40,000, like it usually is each year, assuming our 4% retirement withdrawal rate. This turns it into $960,000, $480,000 of which is in stocks and $480,000 in bonds. But now something terrible happens, and the market loses half of its value. This causes our stocks to now be valued at $240,000. And if we assume our bonds had an average year of 4.5% return, are now valued at $501,600 by the end of the year, for a total of $741,600 in our retirement nest egg. But now the ratio between our stocks and bonds is out of whack and is no longer anywhere near the intended ratio of 50-50. Now, you don't need to constantly rebalance your portfolio. There will always be some differences, but it should be done whenever a significant gain or loss causes the ratios to become too far out of line. In this case, we will rebalance, which means that we now have $370,800 in both stocks and bonds, returning us back to our 50% ratio. The next year, we will withdraw our $40,000, which, after adjusted for inflation, like I said, is $40,800. And if we assume the stock market stays flat and has no change whatsoever, our bonds still receive a 4.5% increase, assuming a traditional historical average. Then at the end of the year, our totals will be $350,800 still in stocks, which is unchanged, and $366,586 in bonds, for a total of $717,000 and change. So as you can see in this example, our total amount is continuing to go down, which means that during a prolonged period of either losses or a relatively flat stock market, we can quickly start to deplete our nest egg, which is why we are not able to withdraw more than 4% safely. Now, a minimum of a 30-year time span before running out of money might be fine and dandy if you plan on retiring in your 60s. But for those of us in the FIRE community who want to get out of the rat race as quickly as possible, we need to ensure that our money lasts us a lot longer than 30 years. So, what should we do? As the number of years increases that our money must last us, the rate at which we can safely withdraw that money slowly begins to go down, such that after 50 years, the safe withdrawal rate is only about 3.4% on a 50-50 split. To combat this, we have a few options. First, we can allocate our money a little bit differently, and instead of a 50-50 split, if we went with 80% in stocks and 20% in bonds, our withdrawal rate would increase to about 3.7%, with the trade-off of being a slightly more risky. This is because stocks tend to have a higher degree of fluctuation in their prices than do bonds. Additionally, keep in mind that at some point we will be able to collect Social Security payments, which will reduce the amount that we need to withdraw every year and still be able to maintain the same quality of living. While members in the FIRE community may not be able to collect nearly the same amount of Social Security as other people because they have worked their entire lives, you only need to have worked for at least 10 years to be eligible to collect a payout for Social Security, which should include most people in the FIRE community. But probably the biggest thing that we who choose to retire extremely early can do to maintain the higher 4% withdrawal rate is to simply be flexible. Remember, during most years, the gains on your investment are going to outpace your withdrawals, which means we really only have to worry about the select few years here and there where the economy is just terrible. If the economy tanks shortly after we retire, consider trying to be slightly more frugal, and instead of attempting to live on $40,000 a year, maybe you want to cut that back temporarily to only $30,000 each year until the economy begins to show signs of recovering. Alternatively, you can simply return to the workforce for another year or two. Even if you were to just get a part-time job, that extra income will go a long way towards mitigating the losses incurred during those down years. There's no shame in returning to the workforce temporarily to ensure that you maintain the higher long-term withdrawal rate. Remember, your absolute worst-case scenario, which is temporarily returning to the workforce, is most people's everyday lives. Think about that for a minute. Let that really sink in. You see, there's nothing wrong with temporarily returning to the workforce during a recession. Your average person is already in the workforce and will be for many years to come. There's no shame in returning. It's their everyday lives. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the 4% rule in a nutshell. Now if you've stuck around this long, it means you probably enjoyed the video and got something productive out of it. So do me a favor, smash that like button and leave a comment, and I'll see you all again in a few days. Thank you.